At the engagement party, Marcus's young niece, who suffered from depression, arrived with arms full of scars. "Uncle, you once promised we'd have a child together. I was kidnapped and my uterus was damaged. So can you ask Aunt to have a child for us, please?" The IVF agreement was placed in front of Grace. Marcus pulled Grace closer, gently coaxing. "Luna is having a depressive episode. She's not being reasonable. Just sign it first, so it doesn't affect our engagement process." Looking at them, Grace felt a wave of nausea. This relationship, entangled with a third person, had to end. As trembling hand reached for the IVF agreement, the sarcastic gazes from the surrounding crowd felt like daggers. Taking a deep breath, Grace looked at Marcus. "Marcus, what exactly do you take me for?" An expression of annoyance immediately appeared on his face. In his mind, Grace was supposed to obediently take the agreement, sign it, and present it to him with both hands. Of course, the child's mother. The warmth had long vanished from Marcus's eyes. "We are already engaged. Do you still need to ask such a question? Be good, Grace. Sign it." He was always like this. He never directly clarified their relationship in front of Luna, child's mother, my prop for wedding photos, future teammate. In countless occasions, Marcus referred to Grace with such titles. In his eyes, it seemed Grace was a presence that had to be hidden. For 5 whole years, Grace gradually lost her identity. The project contract, which Grace had secured by pushing herself to the brink, drinking herself sick, now bore Luna's name. In the family photo Marcus shared on social media, Grace was cropped out. The engraving of Grace's name on the engagement ring had even been professionally polished off by him. Every time Grace wanted to talk to him, before she could even open her mouth, he would always push a check towards her, only saying, "Luna has depression. Don't argue with her." Seeing that Grace still hadn't moved, he impatiently loosened his tie. "You know Luna's illness. The child will not be genetically related to you, but he will be registered under your name. You will be his only mother." Facing his increasingly pale face, Marcus's tone softened. "It's just to make her happy by signing it. Whether to have the baby, we can discuss later. Be more generous, Grace." Marcus's single word, generous, trapped Grace within a moral framework. He was certain that for him, Grace would sign the IVF agreement. A bitter taste rose in Grace's mouth. Grace stood up and pushed the agreement away. "I'm sorry, I won't sign." The moment the paper slipped, Luna burst into tears. "Since Grace isn't willing to carry this child, then I don't want to live anymore." She pounded her chest forcefully, letting out a painful wail. "Luna!" Marcus immediately stood up. His gaze at Grace was filled with fury. "Grace, do you have to force Luna to her death to be satisfied? It's just signing a paper to make Luna feel better. Why do you have to make things difficult for her?" He squeezed Grace's hand and signed Grace's name stroke by stroke on the agreement. Luna, who had just been crying and wailing, was now calm. She looked at Grace, her eyes full of provocation. Her tone carried her usual grievance. "I know I'm sick, useless, a ruined person. Aunt despises me. My last bit of value in this world is gone. I'll just die." Grace's hand bones ached painfully, and tears spilled onto the paper. Marcus's grip didn't lessen in the slightest, until the paper tore. Only after the last stroke was finished did Marcus release Grace's hand. He handed the agreement to Luna. "Don't cry, Luna." Aunt agreed. He didn't see the clear handprints on Grace's skin, some spots already bruised purple. The eyes of the surrounding crowd were like sharp blades piercing into Grace's body. Grace looked up, tears in her eyes, and saw the 2 intimately close figures in front of her. Her heart felt numb and dully painful. Suppressing the sourness in her throat, Grace said, "Luna, I'm giving your uncle back to you. Marcus, our engagement is off." "Off?" Marcus turned around in surprise, his tone carrying a faint threat. "What kind of tantrum are you throwing now? It's just a signature. Why make the situation so tense? Do you think that just because we're engaged, you have the right to humiliate me?" Grace frowned at the man in front of her and retorted, "What right do I have?" "For 5 years, to accommodate Luna's emotions, I gave everything I could." Struggling to suppress the sob in her throat, Grace recounted 5 years of concessions. "You said Luna got her illness from saving you and couldn't be without a source of income, so I directly split half of my shares with her. She would scream and convulse whenever she saw a photo of you and me. Then my head would be cut out of all photos. Marcus, I owe you nothing, so I've decided to call off the engagement." Marcus's Adam's apple bobbed, but he couldn't utter a word. The palm that wanted to hold Grace's wrist missed. Grace forcefully removed the engagement ring from her ring finger and returned it to him. Just as Grace was about to leave the venue, the projector screen began to flicker. A photo of Grace in a business meeting was magnified several times. Under the blurry lens, a partner handing Grace a tissue was coincidentally captured as if it were the prelude to a kiss. Luna took the microphone and stood on stage. As if using all her strength, she said to Grace, "This is the real reason you're breaking off the engagement, isn't it, Uncle? I really just happened to pass by and take this picture." Her voice tinged with a sob. She shook her head, feigning distress, patting her temples. "I want to forget this scene, but I can't. I originally wanted to ask Aunt for clarification today, but I didn't expect Aunt to call off the engagement first. So, it turns out someone else was waiting. That's why Aunt felt so confident to abandon 5 years of feelings with Uncle. I knew Aunt was always so quick with business deals. Uncle, you've been fooled by this woman." In a few short sentences, Luna completely obliterated Grace's countless efforts over the years. The weeks of late nights Grace spent in the office, the sleepless nights, the endless cups of instant coffee seemed to vanish. She implied that everything Grace achieved was through her body. "What nonsense are you talking?" Grace interrupted loudly. "Everyone has seen the proposals I've made and the meetings I've attended over these years. Can you really twist facts with just one picture?" After saying that, Grace realized that all the contracts over the years had been rewritten with Luna's name. She stole Grace's life, Grace's efforts, and she wanted to use a single photo to destroy Grace's future. The gazes falling upon Grace were all frivolous, scrutinizing. Grace eagerly looked at Marcus, but was stopped by the disappointment in his eyes. "Grace, is this why you didn't want me to handle client meetings?" His eyes were filled with deep sorrow. Grace anxiously defended herself. "I didn't want you to handle client meetings because 3 years ago you drank yourself sick. You nearly died in the ICU. Marcus, have you forgotten everything we went through?" "Enough!" Marcus roared fiercely. "Are you saying Luna deliberately orchestrated all of this just to ruin my engagement party?" He pointed at Luna, who was feigning tears on stage, enunciating each word. "Do you know how much negative impact this will have on her mood? How much psychological pressure it will put on her? Grace, we shouldn't just break off the engagement. I'm notifying HR now. You don't need to come to work tomorrow either." Hearing this, Grace's pupils involuntarily dilated. The corporation always had an unwritten rule. Every heir had to bootstrap a company and make it successful before inheriting the family business. For these 5 years, Grace worked tirelessly year-round for Marcus's company, personally overseeing every project, not missing any detail. She built the company's reputation to be top-tier in the industry. Finally, this year, Marcus qualified to inherit the family business. Grace thought after 5 years of hardship, it was time to take a breath from the busy life. But she never expected that Marcus, based on a baseless photo, wouldn't listen to her explanations and chose to directly kick her, one of the co-founders, out of the company. Indignation, anger, and grievance enveloped Grace. "Can you just twist facts with your words alone?" Grace picked up her phone and pressed a contact on her contact list, sneering. "I'm calling Wallace now. The person directly involved should know the truth better than an onlooker, right? I'll put him on speakerphone and ask him if Wallace and I have an improper relationship." Luna's face instantly went pale. Before she could refuse, the scattered laughter of the onlookers spilled out first. "Who does she think she is? Can she just call Wallace whenever she wants? She's just deluding herself. Where does an orphan get such confidence? Let her use speakerphone. Wallace wouldn't care about a bedmate he used and discarded." The moment Grace dialed, Marcus's eyes were fixed on her. Time passed by second. The flicker of hope that had just ignited in his eyes gradually vanished. Sarcasm and anger peaked when the phone's busy tone rang. Marcus stepped forward and grabbed Grace by the neck. "Are you making this call just to prove your status as a bedmate to everyone? To tell everyone that the company's projects were successfully secured through your body? How much more do you want to humiliate me?" He spoke through clenched teeth. The thin air in Grace's throat made it difficult for her to even retort. Luna's whimpering started again. She unsteadily fell into Marcus's arms. "Uncle, I'm having trouble breathing. This situation now is not what I wanted to see. It's so suffocating. I originally thought Aunt must have a legitimate reason." She gasped, her eyes filled with prearranged panic. "Uncle, can you take me to the hospital, please?" Marcus carried Luna out of the venue, and as Grace scrambled up from the ground, she met Luna's triumphant gaze. The frivolous looks from all around made Grace realize that she had become their water cooler gossip. when walked out of the banquet hall. Everything that had just happened inside was already on the front page of major news outlets. Rival companies were frantically buying press releases. Suddenly, Grace's scandals were flying everywhere. Netizens were recklessly photoshopping unflattering images of Grace, and she had to temporarily turn off her phone's internet. Wandering aimlessly through the streets, Grace found herself circling back to the estate. She thought Marcus would be at the hospital with Luna, who was having an episode. But at the door, she heard their laughter. Luna was laughing heartily, no sign of depression visible. Seeing arrive, Luna's eyes curved into a smile. She raised her hand, and the maid threw all Grace's belongings out. "I thought you wouldn't have the face to come back." Luna's eyes were full of contempt. "Well, good. You can pick up your things yourself. Save the trouble of throwing them in the trash." Grace crouched down. Her clothes were almost all cut to shreds. Photo frames were scattered everywhere, and former anniversary gifts were a pile of debris. Bending down, a foul stench hit Grace. Seeing disgusted dry heaves, Luna showed fake concern. The puppy was naughty and peed on them. She sneered, mocking, "But this smell really suits you." The door was slammed shut with a loud bang. Looking at all the mess, Grace made a phone call. "Mom, Dad, this time I gambled and lost. I want to come home." Grace slept until noon, waking up to her phone's notification bar completely full. Wallace's apology text was at the very bottom. He was on a business trip abroad yesterday, and the time difference unexpectedly caused Grace such a big problem. The restaurant where the photo was taken also promptly released the surveillance footage of that day online. It confirmed that the action captured in the photo was just a coincidence. Wallace and Grace had no inappropriate behavior. The voices that had previously condemned Grace on the internet instantly reversed, all starting to support her. In's call history. Dozens of missed calls from Marcus caught her eye. In 5 years of dating, they had never fought overnight, let alone a situation like Grace not coming home. Now that the tide had turned, Marcus must have realized his impropriety, which was why he was so helpless, frantically calling her. Just as Grace was about to call him back, her phone screen flashed, and Marcus called again. As soon as she answered, a torrent of angry shouts froze the smile on Grace's face. "Grace, is this what you wanted to see?" Marcus was agitated, his voice growing rougher. "Yesterday you said evidence was enough. Why did you have such a big scene today? Are you happy now that Luna has become the target of public criticism?" He took a deep breath. "Grand Hotel. I want to see you there in 10 minutes. Only the busy tone remained in Grace's ear. Arriving at the Grand Hotel, Grace finally understood why Marcus, usually so self-possessed, reacted so strongly. Luna stood on the rooftop, the wind blowing her skirt. Seeing arrive, her emotions grew even more agitated. Marcus walked in quickly. "You knew Luna has depression, and you still posted her personal information online?" This morning, countless threatening calls and texts scared her into stress-induced physical symptoms. "You're always decisive, but I never thought you'd be so cruel to your niece." He accused Grace sentence by sentence, placing all the blame on her shoulders. "Go apologize to Luna quickly, otherwise, if someone dies, how will you handle it?" The disappointment in Grace's eyes could no longer be hidden. "I was slandered, and you want the victim to apologize to the slanderer? Human lives are more important." Marcus gripped Grace's arm tightly. "I've had HR retract your dismissal, and your shares will be compensated with mine. Our engagement is still on, okay? The trip you mentioned before, I'll arrange it. Just the two of us. As long as you apologize to Luna." He methodically listed the bargaining chips Grace had once longed for, one by one. So had always known what Grace wanted. He just disdained to give it to her. Or rather, in those 5 years, he had never truly acknowledged Grace's needs. A void opened in Grace's heart, and she said with a smile, "I don't care for your company's shares. I don't want the position either. And you are trash." Marcus was so incensed he laughed. "Grace, what right do you have to speak to me like that? Do you believe me if I say?" An urgent ring interrupted him. He answered, and Henry's anxious voice came from the phone. "Marcus, I just handed the company over to you. How could you have caused such a massive disaster? Tell me, how could you provoke the family? Our capital chain is almost completely broken. We can only last 3 days at most." Marcus froze for a second, then looked up, meeting Grace's indifferent gaze. "What are you talking about, Dad?" Marcus's smile was stiff. "The family." He suddenly thought of something, looked up at Grace. "Grace?" He hung up the phone, his eyes filled with disdain. Do you think you can fool me by using an AI-generated recording of my father's voice? Marcus asked with a laugh. The voice sounds really similar, but your lie is too low grade. The corporation's capital chain can only last 3 days? Do you still think the corporation is that bootstrapped company we operated before? Grace didn't want to waste words and turned to leave. At this moment, screams came from the crowd. Luna stood on the edge of the rooftop, shouting Grace's name loudly and defiantly. Grace, if I die, you will be the culprit who killed me. I was just worried about Uncle getting hurt. Even if I had good intentions but messed up, do you have to push me to such a dead end? Marcus's nerves tensed again. Grace, just go apologize to her. She's a patient. For 5 years. Grace's mind had been numbed too many times by such words. She's just a child. She's a patient. We, as elders, shouldn't argue with her. These words chipped away at Grace's bottom line again and again. Today, she didn't want to give in anymore. Grace looked at Marcus. Do you really think you understand, Luna? The man in front of her was stunned for a moment by her question. What do you mean by that? Grace took out a medical report from her purse and handed it to him. Luna's name was clearly written on it, followed by psychological evaluation showed no abnormalities. When went upstairs, his steps were still a bit unsteady. Grace's words echoed uncontrollably in his mind. Luna has been deceiving you for 5 whole years. Why do you think she managed to escape completely unharmed after being kidnapped by her enemies? With each step Marcus took up the stairs, the strange feeling in his heart intensified. He had harbored the same question for years, but out of trust for his niece, he had never asked. His enemies were known for being ruthless and cunning. Luna was the first hostage to escape from them. He reached the rooftop, took several deep breaths, and then pushed open the door. When saw Marcus come up alone, her expression instantly changed. Where's Aunt? She asked. She made me so miserable. Isn't she even willing to apologize? Facing tears, Marcus didn't react for the first time. Luna, tell me honestly, what exactly happened the day you were kidnapped? Luna had never expected Marcus to ask this question again. She suddenly choked up, her eyes darting away. What did Grace tell you, Uncle? How can you believe her and not me? The medical report was suddenly slapped onto the ground. The words psychological evaluation showed no abnormalities jumped into Luna's eyes. This must be a forged medical report, Luna explained shrilly. It must have been Grace's outside man who gave her the idea to make us fight each other. Uncle, can't you believe Luna anymore? Marcus pressed his lips together, looking at the familiar face in front of him. He and Luna were not far apart in age, but only now did he truly see the ruthlessness in her eyes, a characteristic of his older brother. Marcus's hand trembled as he took out the envelope Grace had given him earlier. Inside were photos of Luna meeting with representatives from a rival group. Disappointment flickered in his eyes. Is this also forged? Luna, I've been attentive to you since childhood. Why are you doing this? At this point, Luna finally seemed to let down her guard. The previously innocent and lovable facade disappeared. A trace of mockery crossed her lips. Attentive? If it weren't for you, my father wouldn't have died, and I wouldn't have become an outcast, left to fend for herself, and been captured by them. I can feel you want to make amends. But what's the use? My reputation can never be restored. She sneered. My boyfriend broke up with me, and I'm forced to live with you. My father's killer. Marcus, how dare you say you were attentive? Everything he wanted to say was stuck in his throat. The girl, who was both crying and laughing, suddenly stopped. She looked at Marcus. Since you know everything, let me tell you one more secret. Ignoring the firefighter's attempts to stop him, Marcus stepped forward. Luna tugged at his shirt collar. You don't know, do you? Grace is the family's only daughter. She stayed by your side under a false identity for so many years. Not only did she gain nothing, but she was also bullied by you like this. How do you think her father will treat you? Without waiting for Marcus to react, Luna plunged downward, falling directly from the building. A loud thud echoed. Marcus remained stunned in place for a long time, unable to recover. His hands and feet were ice cold. His legs were too weak to stand. The gasps from downstairs seemed to be amplified 100-fold. Marcus felt as if he could already smell the rising scent of blood from below. The anxious atmosphere made him dry heave. Firefighters led him away from the building, under the effect of the hot water. Marcus's consciousness slowly returned. Only then did Luna's last words echo in his mind. Grace is the family's only daughter? His knuckles whitened as he gripped the cup in his hand. The family had always been an untouchable presence in Oakhaven. Due to their immense wealth, they had rarely engaged in commercial activities in recent years. Rumors about the family's situation varied widely. How could Grace be the family's only daughter? For these 5 years, she had been by his side. Even when conditions were extremely difficult at first, Grace had never complained of hardship or exhaustion. For these 5 years, Grace constantly endured the work he forced upon her, and also spent time with him to appease Luna. If she was the family's only daughter, why didn't she reveal her identity directly? His fingernail tapped against the cup, making a sound. Marcus suddenly realized an even more terrible truth. That phone call, he had thought it was an AI-generated recording of his father's voice. Could it be? Could Hayes' capital chain really be broken? Marcus opened his phone, and messages from Henry popped up one after another. Marcus, I'm telling you, if Hayes is ruined in your hands, how can I face the family legacy? I've heard about Luna's situation. I'll arrange for her funeral. What you need to do now is figure out how to please that young lady from the family. Madam, there's a gentleman at the door asking for you. Martha came to find Grace when she was having afternoon tea. Grace got up and went to the door. Marcus stood there respectfully, holding a large bouquet of flowers. Grace, Marcus called out, his voice low and lingering. I now know the truth of what happened that year. I wronged you these past 5 years. Can you give me a chance to make amends? Having been apart for just a few hours, Marcus seemed to have aged significantly. His drooping eye bags nearly reached his cheekbones. Grace scanned him up and down, let out a soft scoff, and prepared to close the door. Marcus quickly wedged himself in the doorframe. His tone even carried a hint of pleading. Grace, please listen to me for a few minutes, okay? I've seen all the evidence you gave me. Before, I was possessed and tricked by Luna. He paused, then continued. Our feelings for these 5 years were real. I know you're always kind. Could you be magnanimous and let me off the hook, please? We can go back to how things were. As if afraid Grace would refuse, he took 2 plane tickets from his pocket. We still need to go to Hawaii together. Grace. Marcus had suddenly become so subservient. Grace looked at him and asked slowly, word by word, Marcus, are you truly seeking reconciliation with Grace, who bootstrapped a company and worked alongside you for 5 years? Or with Grace, the only daughter of Oak Haven's richest man? Marcus froze in place. His mouth was slightly open, but no sound came out. Grace had already found her answer in that silence. Marcus. Grace called his name again. Seeing him snap back to reality, Grace immediately continued. Actually, my least favorite flowers are lilies. Marcus's recently eased expression tensed again. The white lilies in his arms felt scorching hot at that moment. That doesn't matter, Marcus said hurriedly. What do you like? I'll go to the flower shop and buy them for you right now. 5 years of a relationship, and he didn't even know Grace's favorite flowers. A sneer flashed across Grace's lips, and she shook her head. It doesn't matter anymore. You want my forgiveness, don't you? I only have one question for you now. Facing his hopeful eyes, Grace asked, why did Luna jump from the hotel today? Why were a man and a woman alone together at the hotel so early in the morning? Marcus's smile froze on his face. Memories from last night surfaced in his mind. Hearing's loud door slam. He frowned, about to ask if Grace had returned, but Luna spoke first, and came back just now saying she wanted to take all her things. Her eyes welled with tears. Aunt wouldn't really abandon Uncle, would she? Hearing such provocative words, Marcus only felt a dull ache in his temples. His heart swelled with irritation. In his relationship with Grace, he had always been the dominant partner. For 5 years, Grace had always been obedient to his words. When did she abandon him and choose someone else? Acid seemed to secrete in his stomach. Unwilling to show too much emotion in front of Luna, Marcus went directly back to his room. In the early hours, Marcus received a message on his phone. An anonymous number sent him a room number. A sentence followed shortly after. Here's what you want to know. Despite repeatedly suspecting it was a prank, Marcus still drove to the hotel. The moment he opened the hotel room door, Marcus thought of many things. He had predicted the worst outcomes, but he hadn't expected to find Luna in the room, wearing Grace's clothes. Luna's eyes were alluring. Uncle, I know we're not blood-related. Since Grace has done something irreversible. She paused, then hooked her arms around Marcus's neck. You promised you'd give me a child. I'm tainted because of you. You can't despise me. Late at night was when one's thoughts were most vulnerable. He knew that he and his older brother were not blood-related. They were both adopted by Henry, his niece. who had grown up with him, now dressed like his new wife. In the immediate aftermath of betrayal, Marcus found it hard to refuse. The memory flashback ended, and Marcus looked at Grace in front of him. He didn't know how to reply. Should he say he didn't trust Grace enough, believing she would cheat, or that he harbored thoughts of revenge? Losing his head in the middle of the night? Seeing his hesitant expression, Grace smiled. Admit it. If I didn't have this identity, you would never have come back for me. Everything I once wanted to do with you is in the past. Now, seeing your face fills me with utter disgust. The door closed. The lilies in Marcus's hand instantly fell apart. He gritted his back teeth. Since he had once bootstrapped a company and built the new Hayes into an industry leader, then he certainly had the ability now to turn the corporation's fortunes around. Marcus kicked the door in frustration. He turned and walked out of the estate. But what he didn't expect was this: all his former partners now avoided him like the plague. Even with the most favorable terms, he couldn't get them to collaborate with the corporation again. In one afternoon, he visited 8 companies. 6 of them turned him away. Marcus collapsed exhausted in his office. It had been a long time since he personally handled client meetings. He used to delegate all these difficult and tiresome tasks to Grace. He had assumed Grace, as an orphan, was obligated to do these things. He thought he was training Grace, unaware that it was actually Grace's indulgence towards him. He exhaled a turbulent breath from his chest. Marcus closed his eyes, but his mind was filled with Grace's image. Usually, at this time, she would come to him with a cup of tea. Only now did Marcus finally realize what he had truly lost: a genuine and irreplaceable heart. Just as Marcus had rested and was about to try his luck with other companies, he suddenly discovered his name trending again on social media. A video recording of him and Luna's intimate encounter at the hotel was anonymously posted online. From the camera's placement, Marcus understood it was Luna's trick. At this moment, he finally realized that the surveillance video Luna handed to the rival company at the coffee shop was this very one. He let out 2 bitter laughs. Marcus raised his hand and tore all the upcoming partnership documents, scattering them on the floor. The internet was flooded with comments cursing him. They even blamed Luna's death on him. Everything was beyond salvation. There was no point in making another trip. Looking at his father's call on the screen, Marcus hesitated, then answered. Just as he prepared for his father's angry roar, he heard a panicked shout from the other end. "Young, please come back quickly. The master is dying." Marcus rushed home, only to find Henry's body. Martha was sobbing uncontrollably. "We followed your instructions and sealed off all information. We didn't let the master know about the online scandals. But someone sent the master a CD." Marcus looked at the manila envelope on the table. Luna's name stood out prominently. Perhaps this was the cause and effect of everything. His wrong choices had led everything to a dead end. He should bear the consequences for it. 3 days later, the corporation officially declared bankruptcy. When Hayes's facade was dismantled, it attracted a crowd of onlookers. They cheered. They celebrated as the beautiful architecture before them turned into ruins. Overnight, the corporation became an object of scorn in Oakhaven. Returning home that evening, Grace encountered a reeking of alcohol Marcus at her doorstep. Several empty liquor bottles lay at his feet, and his face was unshaven. Seeing, his eyes were as calm as stagnant water. He stood up, gradually closing in on Grace. His tall figure cast her into shadow. Marcus reached into his pocket, seemingly fumbling for something. Grace's internal alarm bells rang, and she was about to scream for help. But then she was momentarily dazzled by the object in his hand. Marcus lowered his gaze. "This is our engagement ring. You gave it to me before. I don't need it now." He slurred indistinctly. "You should have it back. It belongs to you." With that, he staggered away from Grace and disappeared, never looking back. The next day, an unidentified male body suddenly appeared in a river in Oakhaven. He had no name tag, only a note requesting that he be thrown into Potter's Field. Looking at the engagement ring on the table, Grace did not claim the unidentified male body. After a moment of thought, Grace donated the ring to the local community center. The corporation was merged by Wallace and became a subsidiary of the family. Next week will be Grace's first day managing the company as general. After such twists and turns, everything will surely be smooth sailing from now on. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any thoughts about this story, feel free to share them in the comments section. Here is Roses and Love, sharing stories about marriage and women every day. See you tomorrow.